don't know me, I'm your brother. I was raised here in this living hell. You don't know my kind in your world. Fairly soon, time will tell. You are telling me the things you're gonna do for me.
Like everybody. He's gonna need a couple.
I ain't blind and I don't like what I think I see. Taking it to the streets.
And then somebody else out before I let you go.
Taking it to the streets.
The whole intention of this video is to basically allow people who don't know who you are to find out a little bit more about you. And I just wanted to jump right off the hop and ask you the question, who is Randy Kaiser? Can you give us a bit of a backgrounder on you?
I don't usually wear a hat in the house, but I want to make sure that everybody is aware of this character, right? So this, we're all characters in life, and this character with this little tie or maybe a bowler tie or something, and generally going to be wearing a purple shirt, is going to be wandering around Calgary on the streets looking for your votes, okay? Because I'm serious. We're going to make this thing work, and I'm going to be the next mayor of Calgary. Let's put it that way. So who is Randy Kaiser? Well, Randy Kaiser, or Randall Earl Kaiser, is my legal jurisdiction title, or, name, I guess you want to call it that. The legal fiction is also under that name. As many of you know, I function in the common law jurisdiction as well as the legal jurisdiction. And that's maybe a little bit new to a lot of people that are be aware of who this character is, but that's the truth. So my name running is going to be under my common law jurisdiction sovereignty certified name, and that is Lord Randall Earl Kaiser. So the common law jurisdiction is where the elites from Old England and Old Britain and Old Europe function under, and they function also with a common law pure trust, 400-year-old document that's been revised, and I was at one point in my career right next to the revisionist of that trust. So it's not a title, it's a name. And when I put in my application and talked to the people at the elections officials office, I said, can I run under Lord Randall Earl Kaiser? They said, well, you can't use the title. And I said, it's not a title. I said, what is a title in your definition? She said, Mr., Mrs., Doctor. I said, that's fine. Those are legal jurisdiction titles. I said, Lord Randall Earl Kaiser is my name in the common law jurisdiction. She said, well, then I guess that's your name. So we got the okay from the ground level elections official, and we'll just go from there. But that's where it's going to be. And my YouTube channel is now changed to Lord Randall Earl Kaiser. I used to just call it Randy or Randall Kaiser YouTube. And that's that. So who is Randall Earl Kaiser? I was a rancher for many years, always in Alberta, Canada, where my address was, various ranches and farms that I moved around in, trying to keep ahead of that curve in the business world, in the legal jurisdiction, where you have to be a speculator and a businessman at the same time if you're going to own property. So I functioned in that reality, never inside the city of Calgary. However, I got involved in marketing beef from my ranch through a specific retail store chain here in Calgary almost 20 years ago. And the last 10 years of that, we've parted ways in the meantime, but I no longer have cattle. But in the meantime, there was a period there where I actually worked in the stores as well, became pretty proficient at butchering beef and did a little bit of management work and whatnot with the company as well. So we supplied natural beef to a store that's still functioning, changed the name now and some ownership, but for 20 years. So I was, quite familiar with the city at that time, and, built some relationships and whatnot. Physically lived in the city now for 5 years and have been a couple different locations again, currently staying in a bed and breakfast where I function out of now. I'm single and I have no interest in ownership anymore. I don't think in terms of ownership. I lost assets to taking some chances, and some big chances in the world of marketing beef after we got out of the retail jurisdiction, if you want to call it that, where we were, playing just with a small store. I went in after some beef packing plant proposals and some very large projects, and in that process ended up losing my assets. So it was a wonderful process, as much as that might be hard on the average brain, and it was on mine too, don't get me wrong. But the idea of finding out how the banking system works has given me knowledge and wisdom, I'm going to call it, that I'll never regret one thing that's happened in my life. And it's just beautiful. So I feel as if it's time for me to now step into the public side and share some of my knowledge and experience on that side, as well as being prepared on the private side for a company that I've created in the nonprofit legal jurisdiction called Dow Energy Foundation, and a common law pure trust, where I was talking about earlier, where I function in the common law jurisdiction, a common law pure trust with the same name, Dow Energy Foundation, TAO, which originally I thought of as the Abundant Ones Energy Foundation, because I was determined to get to a position where abundance would flow through this corporation, or this company, sorry, and this trust to fund projects that are good for mankind. So that was my purpose and my intent, to get into the banking industry. And believe me, by the time I'm mayor of this city, there will be a lot of funding available through that process, because I've made connections around the world that are beautiful, spiritual, mental connections that are happening as we speak. So that's a little introduction for you, my friend.
Thank you. There's a lot to unpack there, actually. One of the things that I was thinking about, the thing that struck me the most is, like, I have this impression that people who run for mayor have a lot of cash or a lot of financial backing and are relatively well off themselves financially, have their Lexuses or their BMWs and their, 5-bedroom house and, in a higher end part of town and that kind of thing. You are definitely a different animal in that sense. You're coming from a completely different place. I guess that leads me to ask you the question, what do you hope to accomplish if you were given the key to the city as mayor? What would be your intention? What would you like to see happen under your, I'll call it your reign. I don't know if I like that term, but as you as the mayor, what would you like to see happen?
Cool. Well, that's the two things that you mentioned there can be tied in together here. Okay. So the idea that I am currently without any funding, like virtually functioning day to day, is very important to what I want to see for the city of Calgary. And what I want to see for the city of Calgary is a conscious awareness that I feel coming and I know is here in my heart, and not just on a spiritual level, but on a conscious level of information, where knowledge and wisdom has been my goal. Okay, my goal to understand and comprehend and understand in some of the more new age kind of language what is really going on this earth, and Mother Earth being the plane of existence where we live, the world of man being the human construct. So that world of man is what's changing, and changing drastically and changing quickly. And most of that coming from well above what we talk about as legal jurisdiction government level. Okay, because all governments function under the legal jurisdiction. All governments are corporations. All governments are functioning in a way that is changing very fast. So a lot of people will talk to me about, and will, my YouTube channel has been focused on staying out of that legal jurisdiction as much as possible, and functioning with the government on your own shoulders. So government meaning control the mind or control the money, mint or mente, and that all needs to be right here in your own realm, on top of your shoulders, and not in the hands of somebody else. So, common law, jurisdiction, and self-government and sovereignty, all in my mind are hand in hand. That's how I function and how I want to see the people of the city of Calgary to function, and trusting in not only in a spiritual sense, the Tao energy or God, or, as jokingly, company is called the Abundant Ones Energy Foundation, so TAO, so we shorten it down, and that is the nonprofit company and the Common Law Peer Trust. But it's that mixture of body, mind, and spirit that I want to bring to people, not from a religious aspect whatsoever, not pinning me down to any spiritual belief of any kind, but open to all, as far as, the and game that we're talking about here. That was a phrase that a friend of mine, I'm going to talk a little bit about a meeting I had earlier today, but he said, it's not an end game, it's an and game from here on in, brother. And I love that one. That's just a beautiful little quick phrase. So are there things that I'd like to see for this city? Yes. Basically, I don't want to see one human, one man or woman living below their comfort income level. Okay. So that being said, every human being deserves a right to his, hers, whatever, not basic, comfort. Okay. So that means their home and their shelter and their food. And if we can't think in terms of that on this world, or in this world of man, then we've got some thinking to do, because that is the truth, that every human being has a birthright. There is no difference between us as conscious living beings, godly creatures, sentient beings, whatever word you want to use for that part of us, and the mammal, okay, than there is any other mammal or bird or fish or plant on this earth, right? So when I say that, no other animal is in debt. No other animal has to pay their way. They just go get what they need and they survive. So that's a very basic, simple kind of platform to bring into this and say that what I want to see in this city is for everyone to be comfortable. From there, project funding that I know is coming through from this shift in the world monetary system is going to, then be available for new projects in this city and in our province and around the world. Don't get me wrong, but I'm trying to keep this video focused on the city of Calgary because it's a mayoralty candidacy run. And that funding that comes in, what I would like to see is less of a globalist agenda. We can't tear it all down really quick or anything like that. And we're not here to destroy. Our logo is work with and never against, and times, those kind of words, that kind of language. And what I'd like to see on a private level and in a public level is more local, more natural, more simple, kind of technology coming through. Technology is going to expand as well, but, do we need to be as fast moving forward as we have been? Well, fine if you want to be, but that fast moving forward does not have to include artificial intelligence or chemical disruption of our food system and our food supply and water, of course, as well. So, here's a little topic from that. And I know I'm kind of ranting on, but I wanted to include this in this little introduction somewhere. And that is the idea of common law being a jurisdiction where it's not democracy rules, where democracy is the mob runs things, okay? I'm not preaching or talking any ism whatsoever, but democracy tends to be where it's a mob rule, where in a jurisdiction of common law, the idea goes back to in the court system, for instance, 13 jurors. And if all 13 don't agree, then there's no change, okay? So to change something, there has to be that complete agreement, okay? So that being said, one of the issues that comes up a lot in cities is the issue of fluoride in water, okay? And I'm going to speak to that. That's what I'm kind of brought this all into perspective here to bring up this issue of fluoride. So there are parents and whatnot that are already putting up signs around the city. Our children's teeth are rotting. We need the fluoride back in our water. Well, to me, that makes no sense whatsoever to try to force a mandatory issue on the entire population. So this is one instance, and you're going to use that term fluoride in the water, but you can think in terms of any question you could ask me, and I'm going to answer in the same manner, where choice is what's important, okay? So if those people feel that their children need more fluoride, they can put fluoride in their water. They're welcome to do that. They can find ways. They can, get their children to use fluoride toothpaste, and they can brush their teeth 15 times a day with it if they choose. But to bring an issue like that, that's contentious, into a public forum and try to get a law and pass through, not when I'm mayor, let's put it that way, because something like that is not going to happen. We're going to have a consensus or we're not going to move ahead. And that's important in a society that thinks that democracy is the answer, where democracy has always been basically mob rules. And we don't want to think that way. I don't believe anymore. We need to think in terms of freedom of choice, loving everyone, giving everyone that opportunity to do as they please within. Yes, we're not going to remove legal jurisdiction laws that are there. They'll slowly, dissipate over time. But, to force people into a situation, it's just ludicrous to me for one special interest group, as big as that special interest group might be, to force it on other people. It just doesn't make sense. In my isms, I'd like to point out a quote by I just about said fellow economist, but I don't think of myself as an economist. I think of myself as a banker. But this economist who worked with John F. Kennedy Jr., John F. Kennedy back in the day, his name was John Kenneth Galbraith, and I refer to some of his quotes often. So he said, under capitalism, man exploits man. Under communism, it's the exact opposite. So please give that some thought, folks, and understand that it's two wings of the same bird, okay? Exploitation of mankind is what's gotten us into a lot of challenges and a lot of troubles. I think in terms of creativism, if I want to put an ism in my mind, okay? And I'm trying to bring that to you guys. So long answer, but
Well, I asked you a loaded question, so you definitely gave me a lot of food for thought. I just the one thing I wanted to paraphrase just to make sure I understood it, and then I want to jump forward to a couple other things you said. The idea of making sure that every Calgarian is living at least a level of comfort. Can we be more specific on that? Like, are we talking every Calgarian is going to get a certain amount of money, or what does that look like in your mind? Can you articulate that a little bit more specifically?
sure. You know, the Liberal government of Canada has actually brought up the term basic income, and they're talking that way. And of course, that brings in the idea of separation of the capitalists or the conservatives in Canada versus the liberals or the socialists in Canada, right? And our minds are trained or programmed to think that way as far as division, right? But if you break it down to the idea that every human being has that right, then you eliminate the idea of liberal or conservative, Republican, Democrat, socialist, communist, capitalist, that kind of language, right? And just break it down to say, we are, even at this moment in time, manifesting every bit of money that we need on this planet. There is no such thing as debt. Anyone that wants to bring that to me better have their guns loaded and tell me how that works, because I'm in the banking industry at the highest level, and debt is complete, utter illusion, right? So if debt is an illusion, then why on earth would any human being not have their comfort needs met in the form of an administrative program at this point in time to supply them with the funding that they need, okay? So that amount would be relative to our part of the world, let's put it that way, your environment. So your environment being, you know, in Calgary, a place where the single man like myself can rent a room for $700 to $800 a month, rent an apartment for $800 to $1,200 a month. Okay, so that is a comfort, is a home that does not need to be met with earning money and considering that debt orientated, right? So that would be, you know, a number that of course people are going to choose together in the community and in Calgary, let's put it that way. What is that comfort income that will get that human being comfortable with their food in their belly? I'm not talking about extras or anything like that. Like, you know, people will obviously choose whether they want to smoke a cigarette or eat a hot dog or buy some healthy food. They're still going to have that choice. But what is that basic, or sorry, not basic, what is that comfort level that would give them that option of having their food and their home, whether it's ownership or a rental? Probably start with a rental because it keeps it simple, and it's going to be transitionary as we go along. So I've been functioning quite well off of around $2,000 a month for the last year. Is that a comfort income? Probably not quite. Like it, I'm going to say we'd probably be looking at $3,000 a month or something like that. And that income would come through a revamped government system, whether that be the municipal, provincial, and federal government working together, or how that works, doesn't matter to me, because they're manifesting money together as it is. And we can talk about that a little bit more later, but specific to your question, I would say in the neighborhood of $3,000 a month. And that goes to every human. If the wealthy human doesn't want it, here you go. Here's some money to donate to some organization. Or, you know, if you can still want to think in a capitalist way, then use it to invest in your and speculate in your own business. Like, we're not here to stomp on anybody's toes or tell anybody what to do, but we're here to look after the comfort income of every human being. That's one of my biggest challenges as a human, to understand why we haven't done that to this point in time. When you realize that money and credit are simply manifested and there is no debt, there's nothing when it comes to debt. Who are you in debt to? You know, that's what I ask anybody that wants to say, well, what about the debt? Who are you in debt to? You know, tell me that story. As a conscious banker who's at the highest level of banking, who knows how the government funding works, who knows how private funding works, who knows how credit works, tell me who you're in debt to.
So are you basically saying then that this money that would go to every Calgarian that would cover their, shall we say, comfort, it's not coming from taxation?
No, no. Taxation is like interesting. Okay, so that leads to the idea of budgets and the illusions, okay, that governments function under. And I'm not here to, I don't want to attack that, William, you know, so I don't want to talk too much about taxation or you know, where money comes from at that level, because I know that credit is available through our monetary system without debt. So the idea of taxation, in my mind, will eventually just disappear over time. But I don't want to jump into a vessel here and go into the future and start talking from that place. I'll do that on my other YouTube channels, conversations. But here, when I'm trying to keep this as, I don't know, understandable as possible for the average human here in Calgary that's going to potentially vote for me, I want to just say that taxation and budgets can all be overridden by credit, okay? So there's no limit to the amount of money that we need that can come into our system. And we've proven that in spades in the last year by seeing how credit just keeps coming. And in my city alone, in Calgary here, there are more municipal projects than you can even shake a stick at. Like, they're just blowing it wide open, from ring roads to revamping downtown, you know, facilities. Our old city hall office was all revamped, multi-million-dollar project. They're currently at this point in time redoing our Princess Island Park entrance. I walk around this city everywhere and there's municipal projects everywhere, under the guise of, we have to get this economy back on track and we're the ones that can do it. Well, okay, I'm not going to argue that point, but when the private money comes through for projects, then government is going to start to diminish and get out of the way of the economy building again. And again, that tends to lead people to think that I'm talking from a socialist and capitalist standpoint, and leading to the idea that private money should do this. If the government wants to stay involved, they can stay involved, but stay involved in an open, honest reality where they're telling us outright that there is no debt. And if that one thing changes in the minds of the masses, and they ask their government officials, who are we in debt to? Just simply ask that question. I will be mayor, because there will be nobody else that will be able to answer that question. There's no other government official that's going to say, oh, well, it's the banks. Well, what do you mean the banks? Where do they get their money? How do they manifest their money? Because they don't have any asset backing it. We moved away completely from asset-backed banking in the 1970s. So ask me another question. You know, like, it's that simple. And if people can get the simplicity of the way I'm talking, then, you know, this is going to be a cakewalk, because I'm not promising one community to have a revamping. Like today, I had a meeting with some people, and they said, "Well, you know, you're pretty much a long shot in here. We got a couple of pretty heavy hitters in here already." And I said, "Well, please share with me then, you know, because I'm naive as to who else is running and the potential of their campaign or anything. So, do you mind if I just roll into that, William, and just keep?"
Carry
Okay. Yeah. So this fellow said to me, "Well, there's a couple people running. One is a Chinese lady, very well known, very influential in the community. Just got a great big rock on her finger from her Asian would-be husband, and she's going to be running for mayor. And she's got beautiful stories. She wants to do this, wants to do that. One of her biggest things is they're going to revamp the whole Chinatown area, right?" So the first thing I thought when he said that is that sounds like old school competitive nature of the electoral process, right? Which is very common, you know. Okay, we've got 250,000 Chinese voters in a city of 1 point, I'm not sure what the population is. Should know that as a mayoralty candidate, but I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure we're between 1.2 and 1.5 million, but you know, they're talking that they can tie up that entire Chinese voting population by promising to revamp the Chinatown area. And it was instantly thinking, I feel sorry for those people, because they're thinking in a competitive separation mentality when they're thinking in terms of an election where, you know, you're talking mob rule once again. And if she's got, you know, a story for every community like that, where we're going to redo the Italian community and the East Indian community, and you know, maybe it would work, but I don't think that that's well, certainly not the way that I'm going to approach this. And we currently have a mayor who's sat for, I think, 2 terms. I'm not positive of that either. Like I said, I'm a little naive as far as politics, but this man had the liberal vote, if you want to call it that, or you know, the social structure vote. And so as far as anybody coming in, the second story that I wanted to relate was another man who is working with a lot of the high wealth people of Calgary to form a campaign, right? So it goes back to our talk about, you know, where am I going to get the money to create the campaign? Well, money can buy a campaign in some people's minds. Well, then why do we have a, you know, social leaning mayor for the last two rounds? Because people have kind of gone that direction in this two-winged, you know, structure of legal jurisdiction separation. So I'm approaching this from the aspect of trusting and surrendering to not only the wisdom of spirituality, but to the knowledge and experience I have, knowing that the monetary system is going to change. And Calgary is not going to be the only place on earth that's going to have this comfort income. So you see, it could be a long shot if you're thinking in terms of what's happening right now on earth and what's happening in the world of Calgary and in the world of politics around the world. But knowing that these changes are going to happen is also knowing that I will have no problem accessing funding to do a campaign and find the funding, or the funding will come to me to pay for signs, you know, that kind of strategy that most people are still going to take. And I'm going to need a certain amount of that. I'm not naive enough to not think that. I'm going to make my presence known with this character walking around the streets a lot, and the white hat, which is already becoming quite popular, believe it or not, in a city of the largest stampede on earth. People ask me like, oh, wow, where's the hat come from? And are you from Texas? And stuff like that. But it's already gotten me a lot of attention, let's put it that way, in the last year. So we'll just continue with that same process. And I love to walk, so that's where you'll find me, folks.
It's true. If you look back at any of Randy's videos, you'll see a lot of him walking, and you walk quite a bit, don't you? How far do you go in a day on average?
Well, in the last year, according to these phones, because one of my nieces told me, she said, well, you got an app on your phone that registers how many kilometers you're walking every day. I said, oh, really? So she showed me that. And the last couple of years, I've been walking a lot because I've been in Calgary for 5 already.
Yep.
And, this last year, I have not had a job, so to speak. So I've been very free and walking constantly. So I've averaged 13 kilometers a day in the last year, every day.
Wow. I'm gonna try to wrangle you back into the conversation of, I mean, you just gave us so much there, but the one thing that kept crossing my mind is that just the way you were describing what you see going forward, or what could happen, what you can create under your leadership, it sounds like a very different approach, a very different way of doing things than what we're used to. And do you have any sense of whether Calgarians are ready for that kind of a change? Because that sounds like basically taking everything that we've all grown up with, taxation, debt, all those things that we've been trained to believe that's the way things are, and we just got to keep going to our jobs and doing that. Can that happen that quickly? Can enough people get the idea of what you're trying to portray, do you think?
Well, the way I see it, William, is that that's going to happen in the time frame between now and the election. It's going to happen not because of me, but it's going to happen because of what's going on in the world. And when I say that, a lot of people will say, oh, you jumped right into spirituality and you just believe and you just you're going into that zone. Well, no, that what I'm doing is what William does, and that is learn. Okay, educate ourselves, not educate ourselves in a university or in a process like that, but consciously examine what's going on in this world from more perspectives than mainstream media or the mockingbird media. And I'm not going to run it down. A lot of people will just say, oh, get away from mainstream media, it's all just lies and everything like that. We all have to grow on our own path. But what I'm asking people to do is expand their minds and to take a look at, alternative media, if you want to call it that, or just listen to a few conscious individuals that are suggesting an alternative to the mainstream media, which is going to continue to try to keep that old world system in place of taxes, of capitalism versus communism, of socialism versus, that stuff, which is all separating our mind. So again, now he's talking about oneness. He's talking about the all. He's talking spiritually again. Well, we have to mix all three. And when I say that, this is going to be my lead up to the platform that I'm going to run under. But I'm going to say it from this aspect first: your body, your mind, and your spirit. So your heart is, in my mind, is where your spirit lies, and your body being, what you're responsible for. You are responsible for, not a government, not a medical industry. You are responsible for your own physical body. That balance between those three, and the mental being your mind, you're responsible for that too, to self-govern yourself, not depend on any government to tell you or to instruct you, right? So you need to educate yourself with your mind more than the mainstream media. You need to look after and be responsible for your body, and then also include your heart, which, yes, does include belief, which does include the fact that we live under one God, one rule, one galactic universal federation of light, whatever language you choose to put on that. there is oneness, right? So that's the spiritual aspect of this. And that's what brings you into the whole idea of getting away from the two-winged beast and staying centered in this idea that that has done nothing but cause us challenges as humans, to keep flipping back and forth and fighting with your neighbor over democracy versus, or sorry, not democracy, over capitalism versus socialism, that kind of ideology, right? So it's all wrapped into one, and I'm glad you keep coming back to it, because it is the platform of not only my, if I want to call it my mayoralty candidacy, I think in terms of our and we, but what's happening in the world at the same time is that conscious balance, that divine masculine, feminine, that bringing together of the human psyche, that attaching your brain back together, the left and the right, that kind of thing, getting ourselves balanced and ready to move forward in this beautiful conscious state of existence that humanity is moving into very quickly. So,
Randy, there's so much that I want to cover with you, and like just for the viewers' benefit, all right, just for the viewers' benefit, I sat down before we started earlier today when I found out that we were going to do this interview, and I wrote out the first 15 questions that came to my mind. So far, we've covered 2, and we're almost an hour in. So to me, what that tells me is that I think we need to break this up into several parts and dig deep into each section, because there's just so much in just what you said today that I want to even dig further. And I just know that we don't have the time to do that in this portion of the interview. And I definitely want to go back and investigate some of that too. But I think I'm just going to look over my questions here just to see if there's a quick question I can ask you to kind of wrap things up with. Yeah, here's one that I kind of like, and it's a little bit connected to the last answer you gave, but also it's kind of a new thing for a lot of the audience members. But if anyone's seen any of your videos, a lot of times you will give a blessing at the end, but you'll also often, almost every time perhaps, say, "I love you." And to everyone, like you're directing at anyone who's watching. That seems awfully unusual and awfully friendly. Is there a reason for why you say that and do that? And the funny thing is, I will say that I feel it. Like I feel the genuineness behind that. It's not just like you're saying it because it's a nice thing to say. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and why you say that and what's behind that?
Sure, brother. That's, again, it could vault me into the world of spirituality, very quickly when I use that language, But to me, it's the answer, love is the answer. Let's put it that way. Like there's so many ways to go through life and so many choices for us. But if we choose love, if we choose to even think about that word, then competition and all those other words start to just fade away. Like if we think in terms of approaching everything we do from a loving standpoint and a recognition of the fact that God is in every single one of us, every single thing, in fact. And I'll use the term God for quite often, and I'll speak in terms of the Lord Jesus Christ being the logos or the logic or the word of God. I'm not pinning myself into any religious category with that. As I said, the corporation or the company, and the Common Law Pure Trust are under Tao energy. So Chinese, Bible basically, right? I have Buddhist friends. I've been in Muslim churches and I've prayed in Muslim churches or mosques, and I've been in Buddhist temples. I've functioned around the world in all of those categories. So nobody's going to be able to pin me down as one, category when it comes to that. But love is the overriding principle in all religions that we need to pay attention to, not doctrine, not, you know, rules and regulations. Just like government, it's bypass those things and think in terms of love and kindness and compassion, caring, sharing being probably as big and as important as love, and go from there. So I agree, William. Like I'm going to ask you, in fact, at this point, if we can do this once a week, and then I'll continue to update on the, you know, short videos during the week and stuff. But if we can do this again next week, and as long as I'm still in the running, we'll just keep pumping them out there. If you're into it with me, and, you know, want to give your hour of the week or whatever to help me out with this, I would just be forever grateful and love you for that, brother.
I'd appreciate that. I have no problem at all doing that. It would be an honor for me to do that. And I think that's a great way to actually kind of wrap up our first of what will appear to be many interviews coming forward. But what we have typically done in your YouTube videos is that you give a blessing. So why don't we honor that and that process and continue the pattern that you've created for yourself on your YouTube channel, and end this particular portion and section of the interview with one of your marvelous and wonderful blessings.
Thank you so much, William. And I think I'm going to add to that ending with the platform, okay? So people start to get used to that as well. And the platform that we're going to use is common law, common credit, and common sense. And next time around, we can expand on those three. Again, thinking in terms of mind, body, and spirit. I like numbers. I like to play with that aspect of things too, but repetition and reprogramming of our subconscious is what I've done myself. And I'm hoping that humanity is doing that on a conscious level to get that idea of love and sharing right into the idea of municipal leadership, provincial leadership, and national leadership, world leadership even, without thinking of it in terms of a crazy spiritual ride, okay? Because it's about consciousness, it's about knowledge, wisdom, and intelligence. And it's got to happen for us to thrive on this planet in a better way than we've ever seen before. So with peace, harmony, love, abundance, and freedom for everyone and everything every day on our minds, me and William saying thank you, folks, because we truly appreciate your watching and your, not so much support at this point in time. I want to support you. I want to give to you that abundance, sovereignty, health, love, and euphoria that we always also say in our videos together. And I've said it for a long time now. So I'm pretty repetitive character. You'll get used to that. Thank you, William. Thank you so much.